Have you ever received a letter, email, or voicemail from a parent that felt like both a fake apology and a guilt trip rolled into one? Hey guys, it's Elena, and this is the first video in a three-part series where I'm going to share 2 letters my mother wrote to me 6 years after I went no contact, along with my response. These letters from my mother are textbook examples of how covert narcissists try to reel you back in while avoiding accountability. And my response will demonstrate how you can both stand your ground and protect your peace. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I grew up in a household with a covertly narcissistic mother and an overtly narcissistic father. Now, where an overt narcissist relies on rage and intimidation to control you, the covert narcissist is more subtle. They use passive aggressiveness, guilt, moral superiority, and martyrdom to get their way. And before we get started, I want to identify a few tactics that you'll want to be on the lookout for as we read along. These are some of the tools that the covert narcissist uses to manipulate you, apply pressure, and make you second guess yourself so you'll comply with their wishes. The first one's actually 3 rolled into one: minimization, deflection, and generalization. When used by a covert narcissist, this looks like downplaying, changing the subject, or shifting attention away from their harmful behavior to avoid accountability. This can also include using broad, sweeping statements that erase specifics and invalidate your experience. Guilt tripping is using shame or obligation to make you feel bad for holding boundaries or speaking up. Martyrdom. Covert narcissists will often position themselves as the long-suffering victim to gain sympathy or compliance. Moral posturing and superiority. That's when the covert narcissist presents themselves as morally superior and the authority on right and wrong, framing themselves as more ethical, righteous, or spiritual than you to shame you into compliance. Triangulation and flying monkeys. Mentioning or using other people, relatives, friends, even neighbors, to deliver messages, gather information, or pressure you on their behalf. And lastly, the favorite tool of all narcissists, gaslighting, rewriting history and trying to make you doubt your memory, perception, or sanity. So now that we've defined some of the behavior, let's get into it. In part 1, we'll read my mother's first letter and break down the behavior together, starting with the opening lines.
Dear Elena, I have done my best to try to respect you and your husband's decision, 6 years ago, to temporarily separate from our side of the family. I, for one, have missed you very much, Elena. Whatever I have done to cause you hurt, pain, or sorrow, I can only apologize sincerely and hope that you might reach a point where you can forgive. Life is very hard at times, and it is not always easy to say and do everything right.
Right out of the gate, this paragraph might sound polite, but let's look closer at what's really happening. Stating that she's done her best to try to respect my decision and then framing it as temporary are her way of achieving 2 objectives. First, it shifts control from me as the one who set the boundary to her, framing my decision as unreasonable and unworthy of respect. And second, it minimizes that decision, transforming it from a permanent boundary to something temporary and less serious. Then comes the guilt hook. I, for one, have missed you very much. This centers my mother's feelings and sets me up to feel bad about maintaining distance. Next, she says, whatever I have done, I can only apologize sincerely. This is the classic non-apology apology, a vague blanket apology that avoids naming any specific harm. There's no ownership here. No, I did this or I should not have done that. Basically, I have no idea what I've done, but sorry. And finally, she ends with, life is very hard. It is not always easy to say and do everything right. This is a dismissive platitude, a classic way of glossing over and excusing bad behavior, turning her harmful choices into unavoidable human mistakes, which takes the focus off the damage done. After getting that introductory paragraph out of the way, my mother uses the bulk of the letter to get to her real reason for writing, shifting the focus completely onto her hardships. As we read this, keep in mind that the goal of this letter was supposed to be reconciliation. The next paragraph begins.
I had a tremendous responsibility thrust upon me at a time in my life when most young people are concerned with only themselves and what they are going to do as a career.
With this sentence, she's setting the tone for a narrative about her own suffering. This is self-martyrdom, positioning herself as the long-suffering hero of the family story. Let's continue.
The loss of my dear mother was a blow that rocked our entire family and way of life. At barely the age of 18, my own personal plans for my life were altered drastically. My mother had requested that I keep the family together. She knew she was going to die, but I was in denial of that fact. but in her own way she was trying to prepare me for what she knew was coming. How can you get such a thing across to your child in such a way that they can be prepared for it? Nevertheless, she had always relied upon me as the oldest child to help the younger ones, so I learned at an early age to be responsible and a caregiver.
This is an obvious attempt to pull on emotional heartstrings, but it's also designed to put me, her daughter, in the position of feeling like I'm betraying not just her, but the dying wish of my grandmother by staying no contact. Notice that none of this paragraph actually addresses what happened between us or the harm that led to the estrangement. Instead, it ignores all of that and reframes the issue as my lack of understanding or compassion for her struggles. This is blatant guilt tripping and deflection, using unrelated hardship to characterize her life as a story of suffering and sacrifice. It's a way to redirect attention away from accountability, shifting the focus off of her harmful behavior and pressuring me to feel sympathy and reconsider my boundary. The next paragraph is a short one, but has lots to unpack. Here she takes a philosophical tone, almost like she's offering a life lesson, but notice how it's really a way to minimize the harm.
Sometimes people go through life thinking their parents should have been better. After all, they're the ones who are looked up to for protection, guidance, and love.
This reframes my expectation for safety and love as unrealistic or naive and reduces abusive behavior to simple imperfection. She goes on to say,
However, parents are subject to use bad judgment to make wrong decisions, to lack an ability to carry out their role perfectly.
this is a generalization that minimizes and fails to name the exact harm done. It shifts the focus from concrete abuse to the idea that nobody's perfect, which invalidates the impact, reduces culpability, and negates the need for accountability. The next paragraph opens with,
I was not and am not the perfect mother, but I was not and am not the worst either.
here she's setting the bar so low that anything short of the worst possible abuse sounds acceptable. This is a classic comparison and minimization tactic, not only minimizing harm, but also implying that I should be grateful because things could have been much worse. She goes on to say,
I have endured many things, many injustices in my lifetime too. Sometimes people are quick to judge someone for injustices that were tolerated. We cannot walk in everyone's shoes. We can only walk in our own. There are many things that need to be taken into consideration before making a judgment or criticism.
with this, she's not just sharing pain, she's using whataboutism to set up a comparison. The subtext is, look at everything I survived and I didn't cut off my family. And by warning against being quick to judge, she's positioning herself as the one with the moral high ground and implying that my decision to go no contact is a sign of being too judgmental instead of self-protection. The rest of the paragraph reads,
Does it mean that the individual is weak because they put up with something that someone else would not have? Does it mean they have no backbone? Or maybe it means that they have a greater resiliency and a greater strength than we ourselves might possess. Sometimes through adversity comes strength of character, compassion, and empathy. After all, we are a product of our environment and many experiences in life. There are many things that I have personally experienced and endured that I would today choose otherwise not to have gone through. However, I would not be who I am today, and I like who I have become. Out of adversity came greater strength, and I would like to think that is true for you too.
in this section, my mother isn't just reflecting on adversity. She's using it once again to compare herself to me. By saying that enduring harm builds strength of character, compassion, and empathy, she's positioning herself as morally superior, someone who went through pain and came out better for it. This is a calculated put down, presented in the third person for the sake of plausible deniability, implying that I'm weaker, less resilient, or even selfish, because as an adult, I chose to set boundaries instead of tolerating mistreatment like she did. She also inadvertently admits that the suffering that she endured was a choice, while neglecting to acknowledge that as a child, I didn't have that choice. The last sentence, I would like to think that is true for you too, isn't encouragement. It's a way of telling me that I should view my own abuse as character building rather than as something that required accountability and distance. In other words, she's suggesting that my no contact decision is evidence that I failed to rise to the occasion. Now, for the close of this letter, it wraps up with,
You might not want to renew our relationship, but I hope that won't be the case. I will always, always love you. You have some wonderful qualities that I miss very much. Your great sense of humor, quick wit, your smile and laugh. I miss hearing you say, "I just called to bug ya," when you telephone me. Though I am writing in regards to our relationship as mother and daughter, I can tell you that I am not alone in missing you. I hope that your children and husband are all doing well. I had to express my feelings to you. Life is too short. Love always, Mom.
This closing paragraph sounds warm and loving, and that's intentional, hence the covert part of the narcissism. The first line is a gentle push to reconcile. Here she acknowledges my decision, but immediately undermines it by expressing her hope that I'll change my mind. Then she says that I have some wonderful qualities that she misses. On the surface, this sounds affirming, but it's actually an emotional hook, a way to remind me of the role I used to play in her life and make me feel guilty for taking that away. I can tell you that I am not alone in missing you is a subtle triangulation, bringing in other unnamed people who allegedly feel the same so that the weight of my decision feels heavier. And finally, she ends with life is too short, which is a fear-based nudge meant to create urgency and anxiety around the idea that time might run out before reconciliation happens. So now you've seen how my mother's first letter after I went no contact was filled with subtle and sometimes not so subtle tactics meant to draw me back in, minimize the harm that was done, and shift the focus away from accountability. If you've ever received a letter, a text, or even a phone call like this, I hope this breakdown has helped you spot those patterns and understand that you are not overreacting. This is exactly what covert narcissistic communication looks like when an adult child sets boundaries. When I received this letter from my mother, and being 6 years into the no contact journey, I immediately saw it for exactly what it was, and I didn't write back. But as life would have it, 3 weeks later, I ran into her at a store. She wanted to speak, so we talked for about 30 minutes or so. During that conversation, she tried every trick in the book, rewriting history, dodging accountability, bringing up family members who had health issues, and eventually telling me that by keeping my children away from her and the rest of the family, I was sheltering them too much and that my kids needed to know that there were bad people in their family too. Yeah, she actually said that. That last statement was just plain weird, and I still don't know what she hoped to achieve with that. In part 2 of this series, we'll examine a much shorter letter my mother wrote to me 3 weeks after that chance meeting, and you'll see how the tactics shift, switching to outright lies and gaslighting, while continuing the covertly manipulative language and persisting in her refusal to take accountability, even as she continued to try and reel me back in. And in part 3, I'll share the letter that I wrote back to my mother and explain why I chose to respond the way I did, so you can see what a firm but calm boundary can look like in real life. If this video helped you, please like, subscribe, and comment with your own experiences. Dealing with a narcissistic parent can leave you feeling alone, and believe me when I tell you, nothing could be further from the truth, and there are so many people who understand you and are here to support you. Your boundaries are valid, and you are not alone on this journey. As always, my name is Elena, and this is What Was Meant. Thank you for watching, and take good care.